Welcome to Fine Line Station, where I read out letters and emails sent by you, the listeners. They are real-life stories about the uncanny, the creepy, and the unknown. I am your host, Charlie Fox, and I hope you're ready to tune in. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope the recent heatwave isn't bringing down your mood. If you're stuck indoors with the AC, then it's the perfect time to listen in. Today we have another letter by the ever-curious Brandon Dove. For those unfamiliar with him, Brandon has sent in several letters and emails about his family and their odd circumstances. It seems like everyone in his family has been in some strange situations throughout their lives. Today's email is titled Lucky and Unlucky and is about Brandon's late uncle Frank. So with that, let's take a wander through Brandon's story. My Uncle Frank was unlucky. Every new year he would claim his luck would finally turn around and this would be his year, but it never was. Uncle Frank lived a ways from my family and I, so I only ever met him a few times. But the story of his unluckiness was a common one told around family dinners. Apparently it all started very small. One day he would miss an important email like a bill or something that needed to be urgently replied to. The next he would accidentally use expired food and give himself, and sometimes his wife, food poisoning. Then they would slowly get worse as the year went on. He would get rear-ended and have to pay a sharp fee to fix the car dents. He would break an arm by tripping on the one uneven tile on the footpath. Once, he even left a job only for everyone else in his sector to be made redundant 1 month later, and they all received massive payouts. When I was younger, I couldn't believe all this happened to one person. Surely my family were just exaggerating the stories, just as all families do. There was even one time, and my dad swore it happened, that Uncle Frank was literally struck by lightning. This sounded insane to me. In Australia, that is a 1 in 12,000 chance. However, on one evening I spent with him, he went through some photos that showed the Lichtenberg figure markings spiraling down his arm. The strike was decades ago, so he only had faint scars by this point, but I could match the photo to his arm in front of me. So yes, if you had to associate being unlucky with anyone, it would be my uncle. That being said, he was actually a relatively optimistic person. When something happened to him, he would always say, "It could have been worse." Which I suppose he wasn't wrong. I always wondered how my Auntie Jan dealt with the various situations, but she would tell me that a pocketful of luck is as good as a sackful of wisdom, and would go about her day always adapting to whatever life threw at my uncle. There was one evening my auntie came across Frano Selak. You may have heard of him before. He is one of history's most famous unlucky people. He was a Croatian man born in 1929 and died in 2016. The first experience was with Selak travelling on a train that crashed into a river. He was able to swim safely to shore, but 17 other passengers drowned. Next was a plane crash, which he survived, then a bus taking an unexpected trip into a river. Several freak car accidents occurred, and then he was literally hit with a bus. What a story, right? Of course, these can't all be verified, but he's certainly one of the most known unlucky people to live. And you might be thinking it at this point now as well, but maybe he was actually the luckiest. To have all that misfortune and still make it out alive and relatively healthy and happy, maybe that was luck at its finest. Sorry for the brief history lesson, but I'll have to continue on just a little bit longer while we look into what luck actually is. It is currently defined as success or failure apparently brought by chance rather than through one's own actions. The term first appeared in the 1480s from Dutch. In English, it was likely used in gambling before anything else. Some people live by the idea that good luck is out there waiting to be found. I'm sure we all had our good luck charms growing up. I still have my lucky coin I found as a kid tucked away with my sentimental items. Different cultures associate different things with luck. Numbers, symbols, fauna or flora. I remember learning in school that spotting a ladybug meant good fortune, or a horseshoe hanging outside would bring luck to the household. Sometimes people associate luck with something that is simply just a positive, however small, like finding a parking spot near the front of the store or grabbing the last of your favourite sweet at a bakery. Looking back at the definition of luck, we can go against that and still call someone lucky for passing a tough exam, or lucky they have so many friends to give them presents on their birthday. At a surface level, these may seem like luck, but we aren't accounting for all the work that happened at the bottom of the iceberg. Placebo and positive thinking have a lot to do with being lucky as well, and the same could be said with your perspective on a situation. Even Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity, which he described as a meaningful coincidence. If you post something online, you'll often find yourself with 100 good comments forgotten, but 2 hurtful ones kept. So maybe it's not actually bad luck, but these negative situations stand out stronger against the positive ones. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but I did fall down the rabbit hole of researching luck after my uncle passed away. Whatever luck actually means, or if it even exists at all, doesn't matter in the end, because one day my uncle finally caved in and admitted he may be a bit unlucky, and he decided it was best to play it safe. And in true irony, that was the day he died. He was in one of the worst weeks where many things had gone wrong. He'd sprained his wrist quite badly when he was pushed over by a shopping cart in the supermarket. He got terribly sunburnt on a day that was meant to be raining. The allergies were affecting him so badly he'd pretty much lost his sense of smell. To top it all off, him and my aunt had gotten into a tiff because the electricity bill hadn't been paid properly and the company was starting to hound them. As I mentioned, my aunt is pretty lenient with Uncle Frank, but even she has her limits of things going wrong. Apparently they got into a pretty big argument when Aunt huffed and went to the post office to deal with the electricity bill. Uncle Frank's final words to her were along the lines of, "Fine, I'll stay here so my unlucky self doesn't mess it up again." When my parents or family explained what happened, they always tell it like some epic tale instead of a few really unfortunate things happening at once. It always reminded me of those Rube Goldberg machine videos. The ones where one small item knocks into a slightly bigger one, which knocks into a different contraption, which sends a ball tumbling down and then shooting something off into the distance. I'm sure we've all seen those videos before. Mind you, I feel the tale changes slightly each time it is retold, but this is how I remember it. My uncle had felt bad about the fight with my auntie and had wanted to make them a dinner they both loved. He'd started with the ingredients for his famous soup while he reread their latest electricity statements. He left it to boil, putting the paper next to the stove while he went to clean up the lounge room. Eventually, he transitioned into some special physio movements to help with his sprained wrist. He booted up their old desktop computer in a very small side room they had set up as a makeshift office. While that was getting ready, he grabbed a cold face cloth to drape over his red face to help cool the sunburn. He loaded the video links the doctor had sent to him, sat down in his chair with the cloth over his face, and listened to the instructions to stretch his wrist. I imagine he must have been feeling quite crappy to have all of those injuries and issues, and after a fight he probably just wanted to zone out for a while and rest up. However, it's probably easy to guess what happens next. The papers caught fire from the stove, shriveling up as embers leapt to the paper towels, then to the dish towels. My aunt had beautiful wooden furniture taken from their original home a few suburbs over before they had to move to a more modern, smaller house. Those caught fire soon after. And then, contents of the kitchen started burning too. The plastic containers, dry food stored away, when it reached the walls. They say that back in the day you had between 14 to 17 minutes to escape a house fire, but nowadays you have closer to 2 or 3 minutes to escape. Surely there was something that would have tipped him off, right? Maybe the smell of smoke. No, he lost that sense due to allergies. The sound, or even visually seeing the smoke and flames? Not with the cloth over his eyes. He was so distracted by taking care of other ailments that he didn't notice any of this. Lastly, you'd think the smoke detectors should have gone off. They were sensible people and changed the batteries regularly. This part of the story seems to change every time someone tells it. It started as Uncle Frank having confused the used batteries with the new ones and replaced the wrong ones so they weren't working. Sometimes it was that the detectives themselves were faulty and that's why they didn't go off. Though I feel like there would have been more legal actions taken if it was that. My other uncle said that Frank would often set off the detector and had hit it with the broom one too many times and it had simply stopped working. Who knows what the truth was? Either way, nothing seemed to alert him before it all got completely out of hand. House fires can generate poisonous gases that even a couple of deep breaths could cause someone to pass out, so maybe that's why he never alerted anyone for help. Within only 5 or so minutes, something called a flashover occurs where every combustible material in an enclosed area ignites. It was at this point that the neighbours noticed what was going on and the firefighters were called, but it was far too late when they arrived. And so the house burned down with Uncle Frank still inside. I guess he was just that unlucky. It was a shock to the whole family. My aunt was sad, of course, but even then it really felt like her and even my whole family knew that one day Frank's unlucky streak would finally take him out. My aunt had to relocate, obviously, and she lives a simple and happy life in a 1-bedroom condo. She takes fire safety very seriously now. In fact, she's probably overly cautious of every minor thing that could go wrong. Nothing tragically unlucky has happened to her, but I understand her desire to be careful, just in case. It's a shame what happened and I would have liked to know my uncle better, but I guess for me, isn't it actually lucky it took this long? I mean, considering everything he went through, he was never out of commission for too long and lived a mostly happy life with his wife. Being lucky or unlucky are two sides of the same coin, after all. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Wow, what a chaotic and sad story to share with us, Brandon. I'm sorry you and your family had to go through that. You bring up some interesting notions about luck though. I tend to think it is random circumstances and coincidences, then your perception of the event rather than the luck itself. But I still find myself wishing for good luck when trying to find a park. Though, the fantastical part of me wonders if there ever is more to it. Why certain things happen the way they do, and then who or what decides that? Who knows? As always, thank you Brandon Dove for sharing another family story with us, along with your own thoughts, and I look forward to the next one. This has been another broadcast by Fine Line Station. I'm Charlie Fox, and I'll speak to you next time.